China has accumulated a hell of a lot of gold. Now, how much she's got since 2002 as a nation, I honestly don't know. But I think we could probably, from her mines and various other sources, we could probably say that it's there's another, I don't know, possibly 10,000 tons. So what we're looking at in China is we're looking at probably 30 to 35,000 tons in the hands of the government, the Communist Party, if you were, hidden around various accounts like the People's Liberation Army and the youth wing of the Communist Party and all this sort of stuff, not shown as reserves on the People's Bank's balance sheet. As far as gold is concerned, China is like a Hotel California. Once it goes in, you don't see it again.
Right.
I mean, I did an exercise trying to work out how much gold the Chinese had before 2002, when they then set up the Shanghai Gold Exchange and permitted their citizens to buy gold. In fact, they advertised and said, gold is good for you, or whatever the byline was. And the result is that since 2002, the citizens have acquired something like 27,000 tons delivered through the SGE. Now, that's a gross figure because what I haven't seen is details, if you like, of scrap going back into the SGE's vaulting system. But I think, we're probably looking well over 25,000 tons, I should say, are in private sector hands. Now, the reason that they started to permit the public, if you like, the Chinese citizens to buy gold in 2002 was it was quite clear that the state had acquired enough of a stake for it to be satisfied, and therefore not to be acting in competition with its own citizens in acquiring gold. And you need to go back to 1983 when the regulations were put in place for the People's Bank of China, was appointed then to acquire the nation's gold and manage the nation's gold reserves, and also silver. That was 1983. Now, bearing in mind that from that time going on to 2002, there was a massive bear market in gold, which took it down from, we're talking about something like $600. It had been higher in 1981, but something like $600, $500 down to half that. A lot of gold was sold out from the West. And not only that, but there was a lot of gold leasing going on, where gold was disappearing into the market and not going back into central banks' coffers. This was estimated by Frank Veneroso in 2002 to have totaled somewhere between 10 and 16,000 tons. Now, he said at the time that he thought that this had ended up round the necks adorning Asian women. Some of it, I'm sure, did, but I think the bulk of it actually went into China. I reckon that by 2002, she had acquired between 20 and 25,000 tons of gold. Now, bearing in mind that ever since then, the policy has continued of not allowing any gold to go out of China. In 2014, I interviewed a director of one of the Swiss refiners, and I asked him whether he'd ever seen any Chinese refined bars, and he said no. I asked him the same question about 7 years later, and he said, well, I heard reports of a few, but we guess they were smuggled out. So you can see that nothing comes out of China. And as you rightly point out, they've accelerated their mine production. They import doré from elsewhere, particularly silver, and refine it, doesn't go out. The only part of China where there is any sort of free trade in gold is Hong Kong. But an awful lot of that, some of the gold from Hong Kong, I think, is released through from China, but basically that is more or less matched by the people on a day trip to Hong Kong walking into the shops in Hong Kong and buying gold jewelry, and they take it back having saved sales tax of something like 20%. So China has accumulated a hell of a lot of gold. Now, how much she's got since 2002 as a nation, I honestly don't know. But I think we could probably, from her mines and various other sources, we could probably say that it's there's another, I don't know, possibly 10,000 tons. So what we're looking at in China is we're looking at probably 30 to 35,000 tons in the hands of the government. The other thing, which is a more recent event, is that banks have been instructed to offer gold accounts to their customers. And what this means is that if you've got a bank account with one of the main Chinese banks, then you can equally deposit your yuan into a gold account. And then you have got an account which tracks the price of gold. Now, bearing in mind that China is a high savings-driven nation, they reckon that household savings amount to 35% of GDP. Now, that is the equivalent of $6 trillion. Property is not absorbing any of this anymore. They can't go and buy foreign investments because of exchange controls. The stock market has been pretty poor for the last 3 years, in contrast to what's been going on in the West. I mean, it's picked up this year a bit, sure, but not enough to persuade Mrs. Wong, or whatever the housewife may be called, to go and buy stocks. But her bank offers a gold account. And so the bank then has to go out and buy gold. And I think this is what we're seeing at the moment in the gold markets. We're seeing the stands for delivery on COMEX alone have been over 2,000 tons since 2021. I mean, it's a fantastic number. On top of that, you've got deliveries out of London. So, any spare gold is basically being siphoned off to the east. And of course, it's not just, the Chinese housewife bank account, bank therefore in the market, but it's also India. And they've recently removed, now you may ask why, but they've recently removed the tax, or cut the tax on gold down to something like 5%. India started buying gold too, after a long period of not doing anything at all. Why? Because she knows that the way the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is going, and BRICS, gold is going to be the future. The days of fiat currencies are rapidly drawing to a close, so she's got to have gold. She's very Keynesian in her approach, but even she sees, it would be a bit silly for us not to have any gold under these circumstances. This is something that I think, Jay, is going to continue until the system breaks. And when we see gold being just incredibly stable at $2,500, I mean, that just tells me that there's big money in there buying the dips, and it never goes further than maybe $10, $20 below the 2,500 level. Right. There is a big buyer in there, and my guess is it's probably China's got something to do with it. If not China, then her associates, like the central banks, whatever, around the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS.